Welcome to Living with Loneliness. This lesson is designed to help you understand how loneliness during caregiving can actually transform your personal and professional relationships and daily activities. It provides an opportunity to step back and evaluate the types of connections you have and whether they still serve you in a positive way. It also allows you to determine if the activities you've historically engaged in still add value to your life. Having experienced years of loneliness after my husband's diagnosis with Alzheimer's, I can honestly say that if it hadn't been for what I went through, I might still be stuck in toxic and stagnant relationships and activities that would have stunted my ability to live a healthy and fulfilling life, not only during caregiving, but post-caregiving. While there are many other ways to learn this lesson, for me, caregiving transformed how I view being alone and the positive and negative ramifications of loneliness. So, throughout this lesson, our goals are to do the following. Number 1, let's understand why loneliness in caregiving actually occurs. Number 2, let's identify actions to take when loneliness becomes overwhelming. And 3, learn how to transition from phases of loneliness to sustained self-love. Let's start with an example. My husband was my best friend, the person I spent most of my time with. We enjoyed each other's company. He was smart, he was interesting, funny, and charming. As an introvert myself, I recharge by spending time alone, and typically I don't have any issues with loneliness. However, as his dementia progressed, I realized how isolated and alone I felt. Working from home, taking care of my husband, and rarely socializing led to too much isolation, even for an introvert. So what was really going on here? Well, loneliness can occur for a whole lot of reasons. But in this lesson, let's take a look at 4. Intellectual disconnection, emotional disconnection, a lack of social engagement, and spiritual disconnection. Let's start with intellectual disconnection. Caregiving requires routine, which lowers stress for both you and your loved one. However, if you're not intellectually challenged throughout the day, you could become pretty disillusioned with that continuity. My days with Mike were not boring per se because I never knew what to expect with his dementia, but our interactions were not stimulating. Our conversations became very basic, and the exchange of communication in later stages of Alzheimer's was like conversing actually with a young child. Simple activities required significant patience, and my typical pace had to slow down to avoid frustrating my husband. If caregiving requires a significant intellectual downshift from what you're used to, that lack of stimulation can generate feelings of seclusion and loneliness. To combat this, aim to learn one new thing every day. I tried to learn as much as I could about Mike's disease and engaged with an online community of people with similar objectives. I improved my caregiving skills by applying what I learned. In other words, I designed some games for Mike. I read self-help books, and I attended online webinars. These activities kept my brain actively engaged intellectually. What are some things that you can do to make sure that you stay intellectually engaged? Let's talk about emotional disconnection. Emotional isolation can occur when you don't have an appropriate outlet to express your feelings. Sharing emotions with someone who can't relate to your situation, isn't really listening, or doesn't have the capacity to provide good counsel can exacerbate feelings of loneliness and isolation. During my time of isolation, I realized many of my long-term relationships had actually run their course. Caring for someone in decline changes your perspective on relationships. You realize how precious time is. And I think we just make better decisions about who we want to spend our time with. I have tremendous clarity now about who I give access to, and I have no issues letting people go. 7 years of caregiving and dementia will do that. Are your current relationships feeding you emotionally? Let's talk about lack of social engagement. A lack of social engagement can accelerate feelings of disconnect. Once you've minimized or eliminated your social activities, reconnecting later is really challenging. Participating regularly in social activities isn't just about fun, it's about feeling a part of something, and that's foundational to all of us having a sense of belonging. Social isolation can lead to depression. Finding time in your schedule to socialize while caregiving is really important because everyone needs to feel a part of something. A night out with friends, participating in church activities, being a part of a gym community, or even family gatherings can help minimize feelings of disconnect. Your social circle should include authentic relationships with people who lift each other up. Are you a part of a group of people or a community where you can be yourself? Now, spiritual disconnection. Being spiritually disconnected can mean separation from God and from yourself. As a caregiver, I often felt numb. It was my coping mechanism. After Mike passed, I realized how detached I had become from myself and from God. I mirrored Mike's behavior as he became a shell of himself due to dementia, and I became a shell of myself. The last few years have been a journey of spiritual reconnection and rebirth for me. I had to discover who I was post-caregiving. And you know what? I'm not the same person. And I'm glad that I'm not. And my relationship with God has changed as well. And I'm glad that it has. I see the world differently now. I used to care what others thought. I was one of those people pleasers, always putting others first and dismissing my feelings of loneliness as irrelevant. My perspective on that has changed. And you know what? I'm a better human being. I'm a better friend. And I'm a better family member and coworker because when I put myself first, I'm caring for the caregiver. Loving and nurturing yourself and surrounding yourself with those who want the best for you means you show up better in this world. For long-term caregivers, I know this can be a very difficult pivot, but it's essential to care for yourself, nurture yourself. If you experience extended feelings of loneliness or depression while caregiving, please consider reaching out to a therapist or to a doctor. Remember, you are a better caregiver when you've taken care of yourself. Now, let's use your notebook or your journal to reflect and document your responses to the following questions. Number 1, are you experiencing any type of the 4 loneliness components that we talked about? Intellectual, emotional, social, or spiritual? If yes, list some things that you can do to combat your loneliness. Has your caregiving experience changed your perspective on relationships? All right, congratulations. You've completed the 8th lesson in the caregiver journey. Look for the 9th lesson coming soon. And go take on the day.